On May the 20th, Starbucks took down an article from its website suggesting that the recycling of its cold beverage cups had now become much easier. The problem was that that article wasn't actually true. Environmental campaign organisation Beyond Plastics was behind an experiment to work out where plastic cups that were placed in Starbucks recycle bin actually ended up. They attached Bluetooth trackers to 53 of these cups, although actually only 36 of the trackers ended up reporting data. So what did they learn? And where did these trackers ultimately end up? Well, according to the data reported by Beyond Plastics, 16 ended up in landfills, 9 ended up at incinerator facilities, 8 were last detected at waste transfer stations, a stop on the way to a landfill or incinerator, 3 materials recovery facilities, which sort and bale plastic but do not themselves recycle it. 0 of these trackers actually pinged from a recycles facility. So this was the original headline of the article that Starbucks published. Recycling your Starbucks cold cup just got easier. Here's why. This now relinks to an article with a different headline. Polypropylene cups earn widely recyclable designation, expanding access to curbside recycling nationwide. Now, of course, I don't just want to echo all of Beyond Plastics' talking points. There are, of course, some fairly obvious problems with this study. First of all, only 36 trackers reported usable data, so the sample was fairly small. Secondly, there is every chance that the addition of these trackers to these plastic cups interfered with the recycling process. This is certainly one of the points that Starbucks made to the UK's Guardian newspaper. Studies that place electronic trackers inside cups do not reflect how recycling systems operate in practice. Those materials are not accepted in recycling streams and can introduce contamination, which may change how materials are handled or where they are routed. Nonetheless, the reality remains that polypropylene plastic, otherwise known as PP, is not recycled very much in the United States. Estimates vary, but a ballpark figure is that between 3% and 8% of PP plastic that is produced is actually recycled. This compares to around 25 to 30% of PET plastic, the kind of plastic that ends up in Coca-Cola bottles. The problem is that just because something is labelled as recyclable doesn't mean that it's actually being recycled. The issue is that the US's plastic recycling infrastructure, insofar as it works, is geared up very much to recycle PET bottles, the kinds of bottles that you get in sparkling water or Coca-Cola, that kind of plastic. It is not really geared up, it has not been targeted for PP plastic. And this is the problem that Starbucks claim is now running up against. So why is it so much harder to recycle PP plastic? Well, first of all, PP plastic melts at a higher temperature. Secondly, it has a much more complex molecular structure that absorbs contaminants, the kinds that you might find in a typical cup of Starbucks coffee. It absorbs them much more easily. And thirdly, it degrades faster when subjected to the kind of recycling processes that exists in many recycling centres. Given those recycling challenges, one might reasonably ask, why use PP plastic at all? Well, for a company like Starbucks, it has some very clear examples. This is what happens when you pour boiling water into a PET plastic bottle. It melts, releasing potentially hazardous chemicals into the drink. Not really what you want when you are trying to enjoy your Starbucks spiced pumpkin latte. For colder liquids, PET plastic would probably work just fine, with one crucial exception. It is much cheaper to use PP plastic. And that is not just because PP plastic per pound tends to be cheaper on average than PET plastic. It is also because PP plastic is much easier to work with and more reliable for producing, for example, coffee cups. That means if you're manufacturing millions and millions of these, you're much less likely to have a defect in a PP coffee cup than you are in a PET coffee cup. That means you're going to be able to use more of them and the manufacturing cost will go down. So, Starbucks could definitely use another type of plastic that is much easier to recycle, but this would hurt their bottom line, and so it's probably something they're not going to be willing to do. Instead, they seem quite happy to promulgate this myth that the plastic they are working with is easy to recycle. Now, I did reach out to Starbucks for a comment for this short video, but no one got back to me. So let's look at labelling. Why is Starbucks saying that PP plastic is widely recyclable when the official statistics, the official figures, suggest otherwise? It's all to do with these guys, Green Blue, who run the How to Recycle labelling scheme. Green Blue is a not-for-profit organisation funded through membership fees paid by companies that want to use the label system on their packaging. And this is where things get murky. As Beyond Plastics rightly points out, the How to Recycle's labelling scheme is not vetted at either state or federal level. These are the members of the Green Blue board: the Clorox Company, household cleaning and consumer products firm, a major packaging end user shaping demand for recyclable plastics. Walmart, say no more, global retail giant, well known, huge downstream influence on packaging through supply chain requirements. Dow, one of the largest global chemical producers, a major producer of polyethylene, polypropylene and other plastic resins. Salon One produces packaging that may include plastic films, laminates and coated papers. Printpak produces flexible packaging. Sadel companies, producers of chemicals that are essential for making textiles, apparel, packaging, personal care products, among other items. Then we have the paper producers, firms that often market themselves as alternative to plastic companies. But the arguments are more nuanced than this. Plastic is still very much used within the paper industry, often for coating sheets of paper where they need to be coated. And often paper is not as recyclable as the industry might have you believe. We have Smurfit Westrock and Delphort Group. And then we have Jeff Worcester, an advisor and consultant who has strong links to the plastics industry. We have Circular Action Alliance, an industry-funded recycling compliance body that aligns financial incentives with how recyclability is defined. And finally, we have the token academic. Now, far be it for me to question the legitimacy of this organisation. These board members, with their strong link to the plastic industry, may all have the integrity of saints. But just looking for a moment at the makeup, it does raise the question whether this widely accepted labelling programme is fit for purpose, or does it need to be reviewed? Particularly when blue-green are suggesting PP, widely used in the kind of coffee cups that Starbucks sells by the hundreds of thousands every day, when they are suggesting that PP is widely recyclable, when clearly it is not being recycled.